Hello, I'm Dr. Chester Wilk. This video, which you can find on YouTube, is entitled The Devil's Intervention into Healthcare, Politics, Churches, Courts, Families. This video shares the very same title as the book itself, and the book is available from Amazon and from bookstores in America. Now here is a full front and back cover of the book. I have experienced a 100% accurate fulfillment of well over 20 highly detailed, complex predictions were given to me by a woman who had to have been my guardian angel. When I was a child and young adult, she'd visit my home for over 20 years, where she'd advise, guide, protect, and caution me on future events, which always came out exactly as she said. And she was never wrong. She probably saved my life in one instance and saved a business relationship in another, and a life-threatening marine experience in still another. I'll be covering these amazing stories in my book. I believe that I was given these accurate predictions to prove to me that there is a higher power, which is God. Only God can be 100% accurate, and since I'm exposing and attacking the devil, and since Christ said that the devil cannot attack himself and survive, I'm confident that what I received is genuine. If anyone challenges the truth or accuracy of what I say here, I'll give any challenger $25,000 if I fail their polygraph test. I'll show you my polygraph test so you can see it. Now, if you look between the arrows, you're going to read, it'll say, examinee has told the truth. Examinee has told the truth. The polygraph is recognized by the FBI, CIA, and the police departments. It's considered to be very reliable. Crooks, liars, and politicians don't want to get near one of these. The devil is a rebellious angel who is behind much of the evil conduct we see in the world today, yet we rarely blame him and tend to blame each other. I was told as a youngster that I'd become very famous. I won a major landmark antitrust lawsuit against the American Medical Association, which in itself, the lawsuit would make a powerful motion picture. However, the story behind this lawsuit is even more sensational and supernatural. I became known in about 100 countries where chiropractic is practiced. It was predicted that I'd expand my interest beyond chiropractic and become more famous, which is happening now with my supporting President Trump. I predicted that he would win the presidency, and I have witnesses to back this up. My nephew can take a polygraph test supporting some of the predictions because he heard them from his mother, my sister, and my ex-wife and 3 daughters will also have to acknowledge that some of these predictions did actually occur during their time, which makes 6 witnesses. 2 of us with polygraphs. The Bible says that when we are given much, that much is expected of us. I don't know of anyone in the entire world who has been given so much supernatural exposure and be able to back it up with a polygraph test that I have. The fame part does not impress me, but the supreme, extreme accuracy does. And this is why I'm compelled to write about it, and especially to support President Trump as being necessarily and vital to the survival of America as a sovereign nation. Prominent professor Dr. Peter Stoner, using the science of probability, says that fulfilling 8 accurate predictions has a probability factor of being 1 chance in 100 quadrillion. Now, 100 quadrillion is 100,000 times larger than a trillion. And a trillion $1 bills stacked on top of each other would circle our planet 5 times. But with our national debt, the stack of bills would circle our planet over 100 times. Fulfilling 8 predictions with 100% accuracy was compared to like marking a coin, placing it into a pile of coins over 2 feet deep, covering the entire state of Texas, and finding that marked coin on the very first try. Now that's for 8. But I had over 20 predictions, and none were ever wrong. Donald Trump was also given extraordinary talent to be able to parlay $1 million into $11 billion and change the skyline of our major cities in a highly competitive profession in the building business. So the Bible says, if you are given much, much is expected from you. So the good Lord said, okay, Donald, I gave you the ability now. It's payback time. President Trump is committed to what the Bible commands, and I'm also committed to supporting him, which is coming from a divine source. This video and book is not about politics or religion as such, but it's about the survival of America. Hillary would have taken us to the point of no return, where the interest on our debt would exceed our gross national product. It'd destroy us economically, and we'd suffer militarily and become vulnerable to be taken over by China as a delinquent debtor. The Bible says the debtor becomes a slave to the creditor. Look at China's history. They are aggressive, and our trade policies were not sustainable, and we'd bankrupt beyond repair. This is an absolute, irrefutable fact, and not conjecture. Trump is saving America from bankruptcy, and any opposition to him has to be totally insane or influenced by the devil. Because we can't be that stupid, but we can be influenced by the devil. What President Trump has accomplished in his first 500 days is history-making and unprecedented. How can anyone argue with such amazing success? He destroyed ISIS, made the world safer for it. He's eliminating the North Korean nuclear crisis and deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. He's saving our corporations from going overseas, and he's gotten many other corporations to return. It's all about keeping and getting and keeping jobs. He lowered our taxes, which will bring trillions of dollars into America instead of sitting overseas. America's had phenomenal growth in every respect because of President Trump's policies. Unemployment is the lowest in 17 years. Consumers' confidence is higher than ever. Home ownership is up. Black and Hispanic home ownership is at a historical all-time high. Stocks are at an all-time high. Our gross national product is growing and preventing bankruptcy. And we will still have a sovereign and free nation 3 years from now, which I doubt we would have had Hillary become president. Too many people are clueless as to how close we came to total disaster under Hillary. President Trump's major historical accomplishments are being dishonestly ignored by his critics. And the more he accomplishes, and the more they ignore his achievements and trash him. Over 90% of the mainstream media is negative against him. This can only be the influence of the devil. If President Trump could walk on water, they'd probably insist he couldn't swim. I say this cynically to demonstrate just how absolutely absurd, ridiculous, and perverted the mainstream media has crawled into the gutter. We can't be that stupid as a nation, but we sure can be that blinded by the devil to not see it. It appears as his critics want him to fail. This is pathological. That's the devil's influence. Ask any pastor, and they will have to agree. His achievements speak louder than any words. What comes out of the mouths of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are so outrageous and disgusting, they humiliate themselves and embarrass the Democratic Party and the entire country. They're a pariah to our nation and should be voted out of office. President Trump knew that he had the ability and the business skill to save America, but to do so, he had to eviscerate 16 political opponents to become president. He shattered some big egos who are angry at him to this day, but he had no other choice. Hillary would have won the election. America's future was at stake. Let's be honest with ourselves. Who could have done what Trump did for America? His obvious achievements speak much louder than any words. He's working without pay, refusing lobby money so he would not be obligated to any special interest groups, and especially the drug interests, so he could put America first above even himself. Who can fault this? If you were in his shoes and you had his money and his fame and grandiose lifestyle, would you sacrifice all of this and put your life and the life of your loved ones at risk and tolerate all the vicious hostility while your critics would attack you and behave like a bunch of hypocrites, ingrates, and misguided fools who can't see past their noses? I don't think one person in 100 would tolerate what President Trump is putting up with to save America. He's putting his country way ahead of himself. He's a true patriot, an American hero, and he's on a God-given mission. He should be loved, admired, and respected by every American for his unselfish commitment to saving America. He's in the center of a major spiritual battle with the devil and his minions like MSNBC, more same negative bullcrap, CNN, CBS, NBC, who are ignoring his monumental success and hoping he actually fails. This is the devil's intervention. This is pathological. They are out of touch with reality, as news stations have become dishonest liberal hacks. Can anyone name a civilized nation in the world that would allow itself to become the dumping ground for the entire world without vetting, while helping other countries build their border walls and opposing us building our own border walls, which would more than pay for itself 100 times over by reducing crime and drugs, and then support sanctuary cities to support the criminal element instead of protecting its citizens? President Obama gave $150 billion to Iran, so they will use this money against us, while the Democrats are trying to stop President Trump from spending $1.5 billion on building our border wall, on our border wall. This goes beyond stupidity or insanity. This took the influence of the devil. Nobody can possibly be that stupid. That's impossible. But they sure can be blinded by the devil. And there's your answer, folks. The devil is behind a major spiritual warfare. His playground is our president's battleground. If you doubt me, ask any pastor. They will all agree. So why aren't our pastors speaking out? Well, for one thing, they don't want to lose their tax-exempt status. It's all about money, you know? And also to avoid being laughed at as being religious fools, since the majority of the self-proclaimed Christians, according to the Barna study, actually believe that the devil is only a symbol of evil. Now, if this was true, it'd make Christ either a liar or a fool. Our pastors need to speak out, set the record straight on this very serious prevailing misrepresentation. President Trump is the last person on the face of this earth to be colluding with the Russians or anybody else, because he's not getting paid one penny to save our nation, and it's costing him a small fortune by trying to save America from self-destruction with our stupid trades. We see world-threatening events happening while our mainstream media is focused on a fraudulent dossier and a porn star. Give me a break. Let the first person without sin point the first finger. And let's not forget, when a person points one finger at someone else, they point 3 fingers at themselves. And they become hypocrites right along with all the others. We live in a world of imperfect people. I'm certainly not perfect, far from it. And the only perfect person was crucified 2,000 years ago. So let's not forget that Christ had to work with a corrupt tax collector named Matthews. He had to work with a zealot named Peter, and a motley crew of sinners who were not exactly role models, to say the very least. And then there was Paul, who was actually a murderer. And so Christ had to accomplish with what he had to work with. Things are no different today. Trump is not perfect, but he's far better than anybody else, and unless you're living in a cave or like some kind of a recluse, he proved it beyond all reasonable doubt. Just look at his record. We see gross hypocrisy coming from the Democrats' smokescreen to cover up their criminal activity. The only coordinated colluders and conspirators are the Democrats. I call them Democrats. In due time, many of them will end up in jail. It's only a matter of time. Can you imagine our nation being run by a bunch of criminals? Had Hillary won the election? Let me say with tongue-in-cheek, God had to step in to save America by trumping the Democrats, or shall we say trumping the Democrats. On an international level, we see an ever-growing respect for President Trump from China, France, Germany, Russia, Mexico, everywhere he goes, even Korea, as a wise and strong leader and skillful negotiator and businessman. But you'd never know it if you listen to idiotic behaving mainstream media. I believe they truly and genuinely believe what they say because they've been blinded from seeing the truth by the devil. Fox News, on the other hand, is fair and balanced and allows you to hear both sides of issues. Thank God for Fox News, or we'd be destroyed as a nation. I highly recommend that you go to YouTube and type in President Trump and then also type in the current date. Between now and November, he'll hold massive rallies to educate and inform the general public, and the YouTube is the perfect place to get it. And you see, and he'll talk about the importance of fair trade. Humor is a powerful weapon to make his point, and he knows just how to use it effectively. President Trump will educate, entertain, inform, and delight the audiences with his open candor. I expect a major victory for the Republicans in November, and President Trump will be the reason for it. And then the devil gets into politics. I'm going to give you 10 examples. Number one, President Obama swapped a deadbeat military deserter named Bergdahl for 5 dangerous terrorists. How can anyone call this a trade-off? That's ridiculous. It's a sellout of America to our enemy. Number two, Obama nominated a lawyer to head the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department who tried to reopen a case to release a convicted murderer who shot a cop in the head during a traffic violation and bragged about it. All 10 of the Democrats in the Judicial Committee supported Obama's evil nomination. He couldn't have nominated a worse lawyer if he scraped the bottom of his cesspool. 3. Donald Trump offered President Obama $50 million to a charity of his choice if he released his birth certificate by a certain date. Obama released it after that date, denying $50 million to any charity. This reveals his true colors. A true Christian would never do that. 4. President Obama expanded the National Security Agency's ability to share data with 16 other agencies without filtering it, which seriously compromised our national security and putting innocent people into danger. President Trump needs to change the NSA back to the way it was and initiate routine polygraphs of all members of the deep state to get rid of the leakers. 5. President Obama gave $150 billion to Iran as a gift, got nothing in return for it. Number 6. Democrats at the 2012 presidential convention had a floor vote on removing God from their platform, and it sounded like a louder majority actually wanted God to be removed. They left God in, but the fact they even voted on such an issue is a disgrace and a smoking gun. If any pastor voted for Obama or Hillary who knew this, they should hang their heads in shame. Number 7, President Obama consistently made bad judgments against the police, such as George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin, the Cambridge Police, Freddie Gray, and never apologized for creating much racial disharmony after he was proven wrong. 8, President Obama put us into a bigger national debt than all 53 of the previous presidents combined, going back to George Washington. Yet, can you name one positive thing he ever initiated in his 8 years in office? Think about that. The answer is no, because there isn't any. Number 9, Hillary tries to represent herself as a champion for women when her behavior proves she's just the exact opposite toward women. Number 10, calculations of the civil rights votes from 1933 through the 1960s showed Republicans favored civil rights votes 96% of the time, whereas the Democrats opposed them 80% of the votes. Yet the Republicans are accused of being racist. This shows you how the devil works. And then there's a lot more. Go to YouTube and type in "the devil is influencing President Obama" for more examples. The Democrats try to destroy Republicans, while some devil-influenced Republicans try to destroy themselves. Classic example of this is with Attorney General Jeff Sessions, a Republican. He recused himself from taking on the Russian collusion case, so he became a Republican. And if he can't do the job, he should resign. His recusal allowed the corrupt Democrats to become the investigators. The title turned, and the investigators will become the investigated, and they will receive their due justice. We're in the midst of, which is by far the biggest national political scandal in American history, and the devil is behind it. We need a major house cleaning of the entire Democratic Party. The Watergate scandal was like a Sunday school picnic compared to Hillary and Obama's behavior. I'm not concerned with Russia today, but I am far more concerned about our potential economic disaster with our stupid trade with China, Japan, and Mexico, and running a huge deficit which is not sustainable and will eventually destroy us. The Russian government was once an atheistic regime, but now it's closer to God than in America. My parents were from Poland, where pastors could speak out politically without being punished for it. Unfortunately, this is not the case in America. And as for the North Korean dictator, he knew that if he ever fired a nuclear missile, he'd cause his own death. He didn't want to die. President Trump told the North Korean dictator how America really screwed up big time in negotiating a horrible settlement with North Korea. President Trump will negotiate a solid agreement with North Korea so the entire world will benefit. Trump is the right man in the right place at the right time, and especially with the upcoming Iranian situation. The Sunnis are peace-loving, but the Shiites in Iran have extremely different attitudes on life and are willing to die for their Allah, believing they will be rewarded with many virgins after their death. President Trump must demand and do whatever it takes to have adequate inspections, because the Shiites are radical enough to use a nuclear option if they ever get it, and kicking the can down the road with Iran would be a fatal mistake. And then how does the devil get into health care? We're killing ourselves at the rate of 3,600 people every week. That's over 500 people a day, from prescription drugs and unnecessary surgery. It's a modern-day medical surgical holocaust. Every 14 minutes, someone dies from unnecessary medications. We kill more people with prescription drugs than with traffic accidents, AIDS, breast cancer, diabetes, respiratory diseases, stroke, and guns. And alcohol, cigarettes, and obesity all kill more people than guns. Guns in the hands of good people can save human lives. A Japanese general was once asked why Japan never invaded the United States during the war, and he said it was because we had too many hunters with guns. In Los Angeles County, the doctors went on a labor union strike and only did necessary surgery, and the death rate dropped by 153 patients within 1 month, according to the LA County records. These statistics speak louder than any words. Can our nation and its people be so incredibly naive to see what we are doing to ourselves with prescription drugs? I've harped on it for years. They can't possibly be that stupid. But they sure can be that programmed by the drug houses and the devil to overutilize drugs, spending $50 million a day. Do you realize what I just said? $50 million a day promoting drugs. This is obscene. It's called greed. If they spent more of that advertising money on research, we'd have less traffic deaths from medication reaction. We have a serious opioid crisis in America today, and President Trump is the first president to bring it to the public attention. The ingredients in some medications can cost pennies, while the prescriptions can cost hundreds of dollars. The markups can be 500,000%. This needs to be brought out and corrected, and President Trump is putting America first and is not in the pocket of the drug companies. We can expect some changes here finally. And we need a chiropractic physician in the White House, since running our government is a very stressful job and needs to be included in the White House. There's nothing more effective and safer than chiropractic adjustments or massage therapy for stress. An ounce of prevention can be worth a ton of cure, while using drugs for stress is a slippery slope to addiction. Then we have how the devil gets into churches. Go to YouTube and type in Pastor Dwayne Miller, Prophecy Isaiah 45 from July 3rd of 2017. We need thousands of pastors like him. Another great pastor is Dr. David Jeremiah, who speaks openly about the devil. He said that he probably sat next to the devil in church in the past, and he wasn't joking when he said it. This is when Dr. David Jeremiah actually opened my eyes about the devil. And if you're listening, Dr. Jeremiah, I thank you very sincerely for that. Our pastors have allowed themselves to be relegated to second-rate citizenship, where they should be pillars in our community, speak out against our crooked politicians. Imagine what kind of nation we'd have today if our pastors were allowed to speak out freely and criticize our politicians when they do wrong. America began as a Judeo-Christian nation. Almost half of the signers of the Declaration of Independence graduated from Orthodox Christian teaching seminaries. Consequently, our nation grew by leaps and bounds. Our Capitol building was once a mega church with religious services being held there. A lot of people don't know this. The separation of church and state was originally intended to reassure the Baptists of no government interference in religious matters. It was perverted by Lyndon B. Lucifer Johnson, in 1964, he corrupted it into an un-American, anti-Judeo-Christian amendment. Look at how far we have spiritually declined since 1964. In one instance, a pastor actually complimented, yes, you heard correctly, complimented a woman for leaving her husband of a 40-year-old marriage without knowing all the facts. But after it was shown to him how he made a horrible mistake, the pastor still refused to apologize and tell the woman that she needed marriage counseling. So the husband contacted all the other pastors in town, hoping to put pressure on this pastor, but none of the other pastors chose to get involved. The pastor sent all the pastors certified letters, receipt requested, so they can't deny being contacted. Then the husband published a book exposing the pastor's conduct and sent copies of the first and second edition of this book to the pastor. Then the husband sent letters to the church members, and things went from bad to worse. Apparently realizing he was not going to be able to defend a 10-year history of wrongdoing, the pastor filed a frivolous stalking lawsuit against the husband to stop him from exposing what he did wrong for 10 long years. That's about as low as you can get. I am that husband, and so I filed a countersuit against this pastor to preserve my First Amendment rights. What is worse is how none of the other pastors in my town of Park Ridge or later in Encinitas, California, to where my wife moved to, wanted to get involved, and all stonewalled me for 10 years. This is inexcusable. My wife held this pastor in very high regard, so there was a good possibility that we would have been celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary had the pastor simply told my wife to get marriage counseling. If these two towns are typical of our churches today, our churches are in very serious trouble and need to be publicly exposed. And then we have how the devil gets in the courts. There have been over 50 million innocent children killed since Roe versus Wade. When you read my book, you will see my two personal cases where the devil got into the judges and had them make reckless and irresponsible mistakes, which in one case actually hurt an innocent child, which was my only granddaughter. My only granddaughter lives only 2 blocks away from me, and I have not seen her in 10 years because of a judge who blindly and irresponsibly refused to read my letter urging my daughter, Kathy, to get Christian marriage counseling. The judge said, "Tui," as if he was spitting, "I'm not going to read your letter," and put a restrainer on me for seeing my only granddaughter. Then we have how the devil gets into families. The high divorce rate in America speaks for itself. There can be a breakdown in families if both parents do not use appropriate discipline when it's necessary. And they should not spoil the children by giving them too much or making it too easy to where they don't appreciate it and expect more. The 5th commandment demands that our children honor their father and mother. One of the biggest mistakes on discipline happens when the children become disrespectful to their parents and the parents allow it to happen and say, "Oh, they'll get better when they get older." This can be a huge mistake and don't need to be corrected, and they need to be corrected with appropriate discipline, which includes spanking before it gets out of hand. My wife and kids are good people with many fine qualities, which I cover in my book, often boast about their accomplishments to this day, and hold no anger toward them, but only disappointment. You read how my oldest daughter, Kim, hated me because I added hot water to my wife's restaurant coffee. My wife and I mutually agreed to cut down on the caffeine, but Kim insisted this was controlling her mother. Kim could not come up with any other reason for her hatred when she was asked. Her hate was unjustified, irrational, and absurd. This was the devil's influence. In the case of my middle daughter, Kathy, she grabbed a conciliatory letter given to her mother by me, threw it on the ground in front of her home, then later said it was only an impulse. That so-called innocent impulse was the devil's intervention. Then Kathy called me at 1:30 in the morning, wanted to renew her relationship with me, but when I suggested including her mother in this relationship, Kathy resented this and withdrew her offer, claiming she was not going to be used as a pawn to get her mother back. I was trying to win both of them back. Kathy's very divisive act was influenced by the devil, hurting her mother, her father, and her daughter. Our youngest daughter, Cindy, hated me because she foolishly squandered her college money and then resented having to pay her last 2 years of college. Have you ever heard of a daughter hating her dad because he did not pay her last 2 years of college? And to be hated for it? Cindy's vile hatred influenced her sisters. Cindy put herself through the last 2 years of college, and I later helped her purchase a home. She could not get pregnant, which could have been because of her hatred, so I helped her financially adopt a child. All three of my girls received substantial financial gifts, not loans. And so Ardith left me, even though I never committed any physical, mental cruelty, never womanized, never got into drugs or alcohol, was faithful and generous to my wife and kids. The Bible says that the spouse must come first in a marriage before children. Ardith was intimidated by her daughters. She was a victim of the Stockholm Syndrome. She said, "I love you, but I can't live with you." She even renewed her marriage vows in a quaint church in Elizabeth, Illinois, then cavalierly violated her vows. She read the Bible every day, went to church every Sunday, and saw herself as being a good church-going Christian. The reason for my bringing up my entire family is to show how our former pastor knew all about the outrageous behavior of my wife and daughters, yet he refused to allow my book into evidence in court when we went to court, refused to urge Ardith to get marriage counseling to this day. It's an ongoing, inexcusable 10-year-old scandal. If that's not the influence of the devil on that pastor and the judges, then what is it? The worst kind of hypocrites can be pastors when they behave in this manner. In my book, you're going to see the loving and caring plaques my wife and daughters all made for me. They gave it to me and then turned against me without a cause. My family may think that I'm attacking them, but this is not true. If I did, the devil would say, "I gotcha." Instead, I'm exposing the devil with this video and book. My only granddaughter lives only 2 blocks away from me, and I have not seen her in 10 years because of a judge who blindly and irresponsibly refused to read my letter urging my daughter, Kathy, get Christmas marriage counseling. He said, "Tui," as he was spitting, and said, "I'm not going to read your letter," and put a restrainer on me, seeing my only granddaughter. The devil got into this judge by blinding, refusing to read my conciliatory letter. We see people killing each other in schools, at work, in churches, on the street, everywhere else. We tend to condemn the people committing the crime, but how often do we blame the devil? So the devil gets away with murder. Here's what Dr. John Phillips, well-renowned pastor, author, and public speaker, said, and I quote, "Our enemies are not people. We must see beyond people. Satan may use people to persecute us, lie to us, cheat us, hurt us, or even kill us. But our real enemy lurks in the shadows of the unseen world, moving people as pawns on the chessboard of time. As long as we see people as enemies and wrestle with them, we will spend our strength in vain." There's your answer, folks, in spades and without question and beyond all doubt. The devil is a liar, divider, and destroyer, and gets away with wrongful acts, while too often our pastors have looked the other way, as I have witnessed here. I hope this message will open their eyes. And now a personal message to all pastors. If you agree with me, and I think virtually all of you do, tell your congregation that President Trump is being guided by God to save America from an economic disaster. If deep in your heart you believe this to be true, and you are obligated to tell this to your congregation, and maybe one day that evil amendment will be corrected. The current amendment was inspired by the devil. Thank you for listening, and I am Dr. Chester A. Wilk. My website is www.chetwilk.com. My email is chester-wilk@sbcglobal.net. And once again, here is the picture of the book.